Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, everybody. You are tuned in to another edition of The Raven's Voice. This is Zealous here, hosting with Tearsin.
Yo.
What's going on? Hope all you've been well, especially coming out of March of War. We're going to get to that.
March of War.
It is over. The event has ended. We are officially in April season now, and the results are posted over on ACL. For those of you who want to look, we got plenty to say about that, plenty to talk about. Other little events like that have come out, but just to get them out of the way, because we always love to have them right up front. Tearsin, can you kick those plugs?
Oh, yeah. You should go to armorcorelegacy.com. That's fun.
That's a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah, that's there. And then you should go to theravensvoice.com. That's also there. Um, let's see, and Ravens was it ravensvoiceacl@gmail.com.
That's the
So,
one.
and I need to check that too. Um, yeah.
There you have it. All right. So we're gonna delve into our topic thread that we've announced some tricks, some tips and tricks of the trades, different things that came into Armored Core that were beyond the instruction manual or something you just discover right out of the garage. But as we were mentioning a moment ago, we got a couple of things to talk about from our most recent event to cover, and that's namely March of War that just passed, and we have had our winners announced, and they're pretty tyrannical. From what I heard, I mean, at least this is
Oh,
what it
I
seems
see
like.
what you did
Yeah, you
there.
got me.
Nice guy.
Yeah, stupid jokes for the win. We have
That's how I roll. That's all I ever do.
we have Tyrants of the New World announced in our first place. Congratulations for your win in March of War. We had a second place going out to Apex, and a third place to Revd, aka Revadian. We had at the rest of the points listings here. Enders almost gave him a run for the money for third place. Almost.
Almost
Almost.
for third. I almost got the brass.
Almost. As
Not
we,
the brass, the bronze, or whatever.
yeah.
Oh, but whatever. Hey, all
I
right.
know,
Here's
right?
here's the
Right.
thing. Tyrants ran away with this thing, and they
Yep.
had it pretty early on, and
Yep.
nobody touched them. Which was different than the last one, but yeah, I mean they had this thing, and they were open about their tactics. They uh they farmed us.
Mm-hmm.
They farmed the mercs, and so they won, and that's fine. Anyone can do that. That's part of the system. But I mean, yeah, they took advantage of it. Congrats to Tyrants.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, I saw them like my first day merking. Never heard of them before this event though. So yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
good for them. Unknowns came in and destroyed this event. Disappointed that Enders didn't really even put up a fight. I mean, they got 24 points. They've had 24 points since the beginning. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, well, what's up with
Yeah,
that?
man. I mean, definitely not as much of a push this end, this time to maybe just seal up the lead, dominate, or even to turn it around and really earn a commanding lead up front. But just looking at this thing and looking where we sit on the on the scoreboard, like you can clearly see some drastic differences of points. But besides that, just the teams that got a chance to get out and play. I know USAF. I saw them at least a lot early on. But I'll tell you what, I ran into a ton of UNAC teams for this event. That's one thing, obviously, a new feature we have at Verdict Day to add, but it just happened a lot of times. There's some times where say, oh, we've got some registered groups, but then you'd have almost all UNACs, like
Hmm.
one person, and be the rest of UNACs, or a full UNAC team in one. It's like, dang it. So whichever way it went down, yeah.
I remember that one time in the the meeting we had, the ACL meeting, which we do about once a week, and I had kind of mocked the whole UNAC thing by bringing up that old commercial for my buddy, that old '80s
Yeah,
toy.
my buddy.
We'll have to link that. That's hilarious. We should play that during the break. We should play that commercial.
Oh man.
Um, yeah, that's where it is. That's where it is right now. Look, this certainly is not the most popular Armored Core. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot to be said for Gen 5 as far as balance and interesting new parts and
Mm-hmm.
dynamics, good and bad. It's a solid game, but look, it's just a lot of people just didn't
Yeah.
buy it.
Yeah.
This is where it's at. Uh, So, what do they do? They go and they make their own team. This is something that I've been pushing now. I've said it in the past. I'm not a UNAC fan. I,
Hmm.
I don't I
Hmm.
don't dig it. I'm not into that thing. I got a UNAC. UNAC, that's fun. And, I play with it for like 5 minutes and then I ditch it. Um, I've never been a big fan of the AI thing. From has tried it every once in a while.
Hmm.
But hey, it's here, and a lot of people are using it, and because of that, I pushed it heavy. I'm like, look, you gotta unlock the Unax a bit here. They're out there,
Yep.
and people are using them, and that's a thing. There's no
Yeah.
reason not to. It doesn't. Your personal preference is irrelevant. There's no reason not to. If you want this to be an event that, uh, you know controls and observes the scope of what the game is
Hmm.
and gains legitimacy for doing that, then you have to let them in.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting too. Even with tyrants, in the farming and everything, even when they didn't have a full force of maybe three to bring in, and then maybe an extra merc, you'd have smaller forces, taking maybe a UNAC or two, and then hiring a merc there. So even then, using them within the constraints of the rules that were set for this event, making things to earn points. So we had that in all fronts. Some people just wanted to run the whole team of powerhouses in for the UNAX. Others, want to use them kind of tactically just to fill in those open portions on teams they wouldn't find themselves outnumbered. For the UNAC, for all the UNAC teams I did run across, I think with the exception of one or two, what I saw was popular was the full teams of quads.
Hmm.
Decked out with double assaults everywhere. Some had the dual missiles, especially utilizing the VTFs, the laser rifles, all large missiles as well, all kinds of things to cripple. In fact, those were my last couple matches. It's against almost a full UNAC team with said weapons, and that was kind of funny. I think Nana Basho had spoken a lot about this, and some of the UNACs that had been run on JP side, and some of the ones that had caught on over on this side, especially the quad theme. So I couldn't help but smile. I mean, seeing a team of quads. I mean, well, clearly they understood what artistic Armored Core beauty is. So I
Eh,
I gotta I credit where credit's due. Credit where credit's due. Good aesthetics.
yeah, credit where you think credit's due.
Yeah, but yeah. Besides that, there were only a couple of UNAC teams I ran across that seemed fairly basic. Especially with the rounds equipped, like battle rifles and everything like that. A couple of lighter weight bipeds or a couple medium weights here and there. And but yeah, for the most part, they were pretty focused and specialized to some kind of theme. So.
You know, so there was a lot of talk about March of War being too long.
Hmm.
Now, the last one we did was War for November. Um, Obviously a shorter month by just a day, but a shorter month. But there's a holiday in there, and it's interesting because I'm kind of on the fence. I'm still leaning on it should be a month. No, you don't have to come out of this thing running. This is
Hmm.
supposed to be a slow burn. This is supposed to give the casual players an opportunity to actually be able to compete with those that maybe come out of this thing like the hare. And you got to give the tortoise a chance to do his thing too. This is our second time doing this now.
Hmm.
It doesn't seem to be working out that way.
Hmm.
There does seem to be some people that slowly and steadily gain points, but the casual teams, the casual players are just they're just not catching up. And
Yeah.
maybe I think there is definitely some room for discussion. I mean, we talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago in our one of our staff meetings, but um, I had said, it would maybe be more interesting if we took this event and did themes like every week or put in special days or something like that. Um, kind of similar. I think you would use the reference of like a power up or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I think that might still be there, but I think maybe there is more to the discussion of making this event shorter. But I think if you make it shorter, then it doesn't become, or I think it becomes something else than what the scope of this event is.
Yeah, it was an interesting discussion, especially looking at where Armored Core is now. We'd spoken a little bit about the adaptability of Armored Core and especially the how open-ended things have become, or with the system changes to make AC more accessible, as it's become, in the later generations we've had, for PS3 and 360. And I think at this point we've seen a good scope of both events and just gameplay time, period. Between for next gen, 4 all the way through 5 now in Verdict Day, where we're currently sitting. And looking at the things like I think it's good that you still have an event that has some time to it because I think tournaments have their place. A well-run tournament isn't something that's going to take you like weeks to complete. You're going to be there and the thing's going to be done and finished. And I want to say it's nice to strike that balance. You have your tournaments that are your solid competitive events that are there and they might be faster in scope, and then you have longer, more community-oriented events. Um, the exact place I think for people to get in and feel comfortable with those, well, some of that's up to the player. I mean, hey, some people got a taste of March of War and events like this. Maybe you didn't participate in these kind of things before, but a lot of that too is going to be I think player decision going forward. um, how much more do you want to throw in the fire participating in something like this? Are you going to give it less next time? Are you going to bother at all? And I think a community response from that is going to mean it's going to mean a lot. Yes, some of it, man. You know, it's almost like a perpetual to be continued. Seeing what their response is going to be for that, and uh, of course way later on AC6. But looking at now, how the teams we have are going to go forward with these events and how they'll handle them. So
Well, the prize for this event wasn't small either. I mean,
no, it wasn't.
you have the emblems, which I need to finish. Sorry, Tyrant's not done yet. You'll get them though for sure. Um, so you have that, but I mean, it's $100.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
PSN bucks, but it's $100.
yeah. To, distribute it throughout the team, which I think that's chill. I know I always like to at least have something in my PSN wallet, just to just to pad it in case I see a release or some DLC or something I want. And I think that's super handy that you can straight up game and just get something like that. You didn't have to be in person for an event. So hey, no joke.
So finally, I think on this topic, we had, and we've talked about it a couple times. We had our little griefers,
Yeah, yeah.
our little clones. Have you ever seen the Family Guy where Stewie clones himself, and it's
Yep,
it's like it's slow and it's retarded and stuff,
yep.
and Brian gets cloned. That's what it felt like. It's like we had our clones out there. They just the emblem looked all weird and wrong and screwed up, and they weren't very good players, and um yeah yeah
well,
that's we had our clones out there.
well, I think it was kind of funny because Avalon was tracking a 4chan thread for AC and Verdict Day and things that were going on. He was seeing if there were any correlations with what we had happening. But I'll tell you what I learned out of this event. We saw our original JP side selves, and I gotta say it was really cool to meet my Midwest self from JP side. However that works.
I bet, is that kind of like seeing like in the Star Trek episode where you see your evil opposite world, and they look just like you except for they have like a goatee.
Something like that. I thought you were gonna say Q. You remember Q?
I remember Q.
Yeah, it was awesome. Something like that. And he had a pointed goatee, might I add. But we had I had a clone, and then Chang had his true JP self from Chang JP, and yeah, there was just a whole little just troop running around in this.
That's them, dude. He's the original. You don't even know. You don't even know, man. That's the original.
Oh man, it was great.
That's the original with our ripped off emblem.
Yep. And it was funny.
It just so happens that he has the same emblem too, from the one that you and I designed,
Exactly.
and I made in game.
Yep.
It's just so. I mean, the coincidence here is just. I mean,
Stunning.
Jesus, I know.
Stunning.
In such a niche community too.
Yes, so niche. So niche. I love that. Niche. But oh man, the as far as their emblem, how hackneyed it was. That's the first thing you could see, about the funny text and everything that was off in that regard. And then I think when some of them got reported firing, the retort back about how they shouldn't and who they really were and everything like that. It's just eh, it's kind of pointless trolling, really. But
Well, yeah, that's like I said last week. I don't. Here's the thing. I mean, if you're doing this because you want to disrupt the event, and you're probably just doing it because you're a very newly post-pubescent kid, who wants attention. Um, this is what I said last week. What was the point? You can't throw off the event. We tally the points. You're not going to be able to throw it off. You're not going to be able to ruin it. So that's the whole thing. I mean, I didn't understand this. Like, what is the point here? What's the end game? If the end game was for us to make fun of you on the show, all right, well, okay, mission accomplished. Except for we don't really know who you are. We can't
Right.
give you credit for anything. Um, okay, a cute little asterisk, cute little point to the event. But I mean, if the goal was to disrupt the event, I there there was no way that was going to happen
No.
because I mean, who are you going to turn your points into?
Well, I'm sure our JP selves could count pretty well too. Maybe they had their own tally. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe they're hosting a March of War too, and that's the whole. And that was this is my whole. It's like, okay, this is cute, but what are you doing?
Man, oh man. In the end, in the end, it was just a blip, on the radar, and just whatever. It brought some smiles though. So
I know they're listening to the show right now.
yeah,
What the hell were you doing? What are you doing? All right, fine, all right, whatever. Okay, see
you
you later.
give your points, man. But yeah, we got a couple more things, in the wings and in the works that we'll be talking about going forward. Um, event wise, and that's always something fun to keep an eye on and keep a channel on. But till then, yeah, it's not like we'll be just firing things up. Oh wait, there's a March of April. Hold up, no, don't expect that. So
You mean in April of War?
yeah, April War. We're gonna run out of names
April.
here soon. Shoot, but good
I mean,
stuff.
I didn't get to participate in this one, not nearly as much as I did in War for November. I had a lot of stuff going on. I still have a
Yeah,
lot of
you
stuff
got
going on, but
you got really busy. I enjoyed playing. To everybody who hosted that, thanks. It was a blast. I was happy I didn't have a broken PS3 coming into this one. It was definitely a good side of it. And, again, hey, grats to everybody, and grats to Tyrants for just a very convincing, commanding lead. So,
yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where it is a long event,
yep.
and someone can sneak up and start taking the lead, and by doing the same thing that you're doing, but obviously by doing it better,
Hmm.
at least for a certain amount of time. If you take your eye off the prize, you could lose it. It's a passive aggressive event in that regard with your competition. So, it's fun like that.
Yep, for sure.
Um, but yeah, congrats to Tyrants. Good stuff. I wish I'd been able to participate more this time around.
Well, stay tuned. So, I think that's a good segue for us. Coming up, we're going to have our discussion for the week about tips and tricks. Again, the parts of AC that were not in the manual or that maybe you just missed, and stuff that we could still learn today. That's what I love about some of the older ACs. And, I think fans of Armored Core, even some newer fans who might have gone back even and played the old games kind of miss some of these elements. It's the subtlety. This is one that's real dear to my heart. Tearsin makes fun of me about this all the time, but I think there's a wealth of things to talk about here, and we're not even going to cover it all here. So we had some good responses to this one. I'm going to say an early thanks to TM Raven, great post, and good links to vids, and we'll get to discussing all that in just a moment. So stay tuned.
Wherever I go, he goes. My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy. I'll teach him everything that I know. My buddy and me like to climb up a tree. My buddy and me, we're the best friends it could be. My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy and me. My buddy from Play School.
Welcome
Hey,
back.
oh yeah, I got,
Yeah,
I gotcha, I gotcha.
you
All
got it
right,
first.
we're back, we're back,
Hey.
and there we go. There, the toy of the '80s, right there. My buddy, that's you guys and your Unax, right there. That's your pretend friends. Okay, so I mean, you're a few years younger than I am, Zealous.
Yep.
I remember that toy when being a little kid. That toy was so gay, and it didn't last long. But I remember Saturday morning cartoons and my buddy showing up, and I mean, I just remember I was like, that is so stupid. I mean, you're competing with He-Man, G.I. Joe,
Stood no chance.
Transformers. No, it didn't stand a chance. It was around for like a year. I don't know, but the good thing about my buddy was it actually spawned a horrible series of movies, Child's Play.
That was
That's
the origin point.
that's
Okay, okay.
that was based off My Buddy. So yeah, there a little bit of if you ever seen those were mediocre horror movies, scary movies. You know, I guess there's a phobia against, like little toys coming into life and killing you. I'm sure there's a phobia for that somewhere that it was playing off of. But yeah, that's where that started. And I see that now, and that's what I think of. It's like, oh, look, the guys running around with this UNAC. That's my butt.
Real quick, what was the as far as just in time of release, the relation of My Buddy to Chucky? How close were they?
I think it was a few years.
Okay, okay.
I believe Child's Play was. I think the first one was maybe mid to late '80s,
Yeah, sounds
whereas
right.
My Buddy was somewhere in the early '80s. Back during the heyday of Star Wars and Transformer toys and stuff. And
Wild. Good stuff.
Gen
So,
One right there, that's Gen One stuff. Original Star Wars toys, original G1 Transformers. Oh man, it's great being an '80s kid.
which
Back when
I'm sure if you still have some of those, I don't know if anyone keeps those mint, like mint in box or something. I bet that would sell.
They all do. I mean,
Yeah.
the original Transformers, those things were, there was plastic, but there was metal in those things.
Yeah.
Those things were rough. I still managed to find ways to break Optimus Prime.
You one of those kids that broke your toys. I should have known.
I didn't break my toys. I broke my brother's
Oh,
toys.
okay, it's a different story.
I still feel bad about that to this day.
Uh,
Yeah, it was my brother. He got Optimus Prime for his birthday, and I didn't mean to, but I'm like, hey, can I see Optimus Prime? It was no more than 2 minutes, and I broke the damn thing's leg off.
wow.
Yeah, I felt bad. He cried. I cried.
Oh man,
I cried because I felt so bad about it.
poor guy.
And he hit me some times too. So that didn't help much either.
No, no. I mean, I think there's a few ways a kid could think of, besides lashing out at that point. I mean, goodness sake, poor
We
guy.
used to, I'm the youngest of three, and we were all boys. So I mean, no, we used weapons on each other a lot. A lot of broken bones. Single mom and all that. Our father was around, but he's a great dad. But we had the run of the house. My mom, she all worked all the time, and so
Hmm.
we did whatever the hell we wanted, which also consisted of beating the shit out of each other. So there
Par
were
for the course.
all the athletic equipment was used to smash on each other. I grabbed a pool stick once and I broke it over my brother's back.
Man,
He flipped me over the couch and broke my shoulder once. Those things happen. Lots of
now,
bruises. Oh yeah,
now, why weren't they filming the Western saloon brawls in your home? That's kind of what I'm curious about.
well, and we were all big too. I
Yeah.
mean, it gets lost that I'm the youngest. I'm 6'6". I used to be 6'7". I'm actually to the point where I'm shrinking. That's how old I am. But I was always, I was the youngest, but I was the biggest out of the three of us. So it was all even. Um, no, yeah, we used to beat each other. I'm sure a lot of people here have older or younger brothers, and maybe not so much sisters. I don't know. But you beat the crap out of each other. That's what you do.
Oh man, good story though, man. You
It's
know,
not, it's not a story. It's the truth.
that,
So but maybe I needed my buddy. Maybe that was the thing. I should have had a buddy. I
maybe
don't know.
see,
Those things were gay.
your brother was better.
Like, and no offense, people, but UNACs are kind of gay too. Running
Funny.
around with your UNAC buddy.
Oh man.
Everything you know, he's gonna know, just like in the commercial.
Where you are, he is too. Sheesh.
I enjoy your UNACs. This is not my thing.
No, man. But hey, welcome to our second segment. Good intro to that. We have our topic of the week. Again, the tips and tricks of the trade, whatever you want to call them, all those little wonderful subtle elements of Armored Core that I would say made it a blast. This was something that really drew me in personally to competitive play in AC. And a lot of these things were things I just ran across, accidentally, via playing or discovering it. I didn't necessarily know the process behind it, but I'm sure this worked differently for different players. I'm sure you had some people out there who might have done better with very by the books, reviewing things carefully and having a process to learn. You may have had people who just simply learn via battle. Heck, that might be the case for most of us. I know that's what you were saying, Tearsin. I know just by playing with others and discussing tech, setting up shop a bit, that's really how I picked up a lot of stuff too. And it's all different, but one thing we kind of did here this week, we asked for some feedback from your end about just your experiences, with AC, as far as how some of these things happen. What are some techniques you could point at, if anything? And we did have posts. We had some good replies. Right before we went into this segment, I was giving a big thanks out to TM Raven for the videos he posted, as well as some explanation and some in-depth looks at some techniques such as slide jumping and some of the others. But before we stagger into some of those, I just want to kick this off with one that I think is very noticeable from the older ACs, and this has been referenced a lot even via the forums. And I just jokingly, I lovingly call it, twitching, twitch dodging. A funny kind of preface note here, a lot of these things that developed, and this is just coming from my perspective, playing with the Midwest community and everything, a lot of these things at the time didn't have a in-stone hard name that everyone colloquially referred to them as, like, this technique is this, and this is we had different points of reference for calling actually the same technique. But the funny part is, a lot of people wouldn't really bother considering the technique. It was just simply a way of moving or style of moving. And maybe if someone saw it, like, oh, how do you, what's that little part behind it? But it started with simple stuff like this. And, I think the reason it's important to bring it up is, again, these are things that were not obvious off the bat, that you wouldn't just simply be told, press this button to execute said action. They were subtleties, and they regarded a certain way, usually, of handling your AC. Our other headliner for this topic, we talked a little, Tearsin mentioned hidden stats a little bit, and we're going to discuss that a little as well, which plagued us for a very, very long time. But, we had some major number crunchers out there in our community. We had some people that love diving into this stuff, making the spreadsheets, doing the calculations, digging the data. I specifically recall Ravenshaven being really into this, armoredcore.org, optimizing the bullet velocity charts and things like that. I'm sure we had other contributors in the community that added to that as well, but I just remember some of the biggest discussions about it being there. So, all this kind of comes together, and again, the forums are kind of a nexus point for some of it, but go ahead.
Well, that's a good segue, I think, into the hidden stats. I mean, you talked about it there. I mean, for years, for so many versions of the game, stats with weaponry was largely unknown.
Yeah.
In particular, when it came to weaponry, when it came to shot velocity, when it came to oh, jeez. Trying to think of the term right now. The funny thing about this is that this varied from game to game and from gen to gen.
Yeah.
Things like velocity and like targeting overall for a weapon, impact. All these stats existed.
Yeah.
These things affected your game. It's kind of funny because I think with Gen 4. And definitely with Gen 5, everything's open book in Gen 5.
Yeah.
In large part, there's something to be said for the exact amount of influence that parts are having and stats are having altogether. But
right.
All the base stats, everything that basically your part is affecting, is having, is on the screen for you. This was just not the case before, and it was kind of funny because when they really ended this, coming into 4 and 5, is when at the end of Gen 3 is when they were at their worst with it, and that was with part breaking.
Yeah.
Brand new. I mean, this was an important new angle to the game. This made a big difference, and they just didn't share this with you. I mean, you knew it existed. They talked about it existing.
Yep.
But I mean, I believe it was the effect that the weapons could have on frame parts. That's the stat that they didn't tell you. That's the stat that people had to figure out. That's a big fucking deal.
Yeah, and again, the community kind of assembled and mined this stuff out, to give us some kind of roadmap into what we were looking at and what the abilities of the weapons were, at least weapon to frame, what were some, the break ratios and things like that. But just straight out unknown factors, that just things you weren't told. And I think part of this really comes down to things to consider when you're theory crafting design. Like obviously, if you're really really wanting to concentrate on break, well that's something you really got to consider. If you're looking for hitting fast, you want things that really solid accurate weapons. Well, that's part of the things you're going to look at. And sometimes these topics would come up. It wouldn't be a huge dumpster dive into 3 hours of informational research. Sometimes it would just be just little tip-offs people would get via forums. I remember Ninebreaker, when people were talking about the BP bazooka and how powerful that was, both for its stopping power and how just the velocity of the shot. People would jokingly call it the solid Kurosawa for a while, and I know some people really got into those hidden stats behind it, like, okay, why is that weapon the way it is from all the talk it had garnered, and actually from seeing this thing, competitively at events and things like that. So there are all kinds of different ways people could come into the topic and get introduced to it. But I think you still only had a select few that really you truly got out their calculators and sat down and really parse through all this stuff carefully. I wasn't part of that, at any point.
No,
Being on the field test. So
I always let the nerds be the nerds and do their nerdery things and grab their calculators and do that. Yeah, that wasn't me either. However, I was the person to test those things out and
yep.
try to feel through them and have an understanding. But part of the problem with this is that there are various parts of an AC that will affect these things, and I mean that's what was so annoying about it.
Yeah.
People will bitch about Gen 4 and Gen 5, and again, I'm assuming with Gen 4. I believe with the short amount of time I played that one, they did show all the stats. Definitely with Gen 5. Gen 5's telling you everything. But, yeah, I mean, in the past, there was just no good reason for this. And as time went on, they did release more and more. But like I said, even with Last Raven, this exciting new thing that you heard whispers about throughout Gen 3. Oh yeah, you're gonna be able to break frame parts and blah 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 and do this and that. And then okay, they put it in, and it's just like, yep, all right, here you go. We're gonna give you frame part breaking, and here's a blindfold. Go ahead and put that on, and all right, knock yourself out. Are you serious?
Oh man. So, but people, at least from what I saw, just adapted to this. If they really wanted to break, they quickly found out what were some of the things that did it quickly and just stuck with it. I know at least in the Midwest, some people weren't too concerned about too many details about that. I remember talking with Rara Stones briefly, about breaks. He couldn't make ACMA 2, but he had a brief discussion about some of the mechanics and things that were going on in LR beforehand. And one of the things he mentioned, we brought up, linear weapons and blades, and like breaking ability and everything. And then he just started talking about a few categories that seemed to plug in well for breaks. He's like, yep, fine, whatever. Those work, and that's that's what I'm looking at. And I'm gonna run with that. But it was interesting. That was one thing in Last Raven, at least, competitively, that I didn't see people really try to go after or harp on a whole lot.
Yeah, but you didn't see much.
I can't say I saw much of it. You didn't, period. You didn't, period. That's the only problem with it. I will say this: there was more Kai for Last Raven than there was tournament competition, and I think that's kind of the context I frame it in. There was a whole JP Kai season for that, and there was ongoing Kai between events, and there was after Kai, as we want to call it as well. People still returning to Last Raven, during AC4 and everything, and heck, some even during 5, everything like that. So there was its shelf life was more online, ironically, I think, than in the actual LAN play community. So
LAN play community.
Dearly missed.
Have you seen that community lately?
Yeah, a little distant.
The barren desert.
A little distant, man. I've not even seen the horizon for that one. So, boy, oh boy. Yeah, tumbleweeds are still blowing. We're still in Kojima Fallout mode from that. Radiation hasn't cleared yet, so don't know if it will either. So till then, I'll just nerd out on those facts. But yeah, why not, right? So looking at all those, I think what was the other break? We talked a little bit about frame part breaking. I guess, with that, obviously you lose an arm, you're going to lose a weapon with
Well, there
that.
was weapon breaking too,
We
wasn't
had
there?
weapon. You had your weapon breaks, yes, but normally it would come with the frame. The weapon itself just exploding. I mean, that was different. That was when I think weapon breaking. I think more back to like slightly earlier,
Yeah,
in
but there
earlier
wasn't even
gens.
stats for that.
No, there wasn't. Yeah, there wasn't. That's the trouble with
It's
it.
so
So.
stupid.
So there's a number of things like that. Again, we said, we may have missed a few too. So, if you guys, if there's something that pops up off the top of your head, or maybe something in the closet you think was a stat that wasn't posted, something you're curious about, post up. We'd like to hear about that, or others that you might have ran into and felt needed more explanation as you were playing through AC. So,
I mean, it's kind of like when you're looking for a new car,
hmm
and you're at the dealership, and you're like, well, okay, well, how many miles per gallon does it get? And the dealer's like, you're gonna just have to try it to find out. I'm not gonna tell you. What do you think we'd have stats on that?
yeah, you try it,
Okay,
you
all
buy
right, all
it.
right. Well, how many shifts does it have? How many different gears? It's like, well, I could tell you, but or you could find out. You could just find out by driving and how many times it shifts. Oh, that's stupid. Jeez, it's
There
like
you have
I
it.
gotta have my buddy with me and be like, hey, what do you
Yeah,
think?
he'd know. Or maybe he'd just mock you like a parrot. I don't know.
My buddy and me.
Man. So, yeah, again, note if you have any of those, but piggybacking off those, we were talking about hidden stats and everything. What about all those little subtle hidden techniques that were there? Maybe not so subtle hidden techniques.
Twitchy dodge.
Twitchy, earlier right in the segment, talked a little bit about introducing this with twitch dodging and kind of like stagger stepping.
Twitch
Um,
dodging's been around forever.
It has. It has a very, very long time. This is a very, very common trait of the earlier ACs and just their movement in general. You could snap into action very fast, when changing your planes, your movement going, left to right. And way back when we did not have our analog options, of course, that was done via the shoulder buttons, L1 and R1. It's kind of cool, before this show on, in fact, on ACL Skype, there was a bit of a discussion. I think it was South Q that had linked a vid from this is back from like 2010 or 2011. Armored Core Live, this little page from software posted. They had some Last Raven portable, and they were looks like they were running through some techniques. It was all in Japanese, but they were running through some techniques and kind of features of the earlier AC games, and they kind of started off with missile dodging, and they definitely went into all kinds of little things, especially the twitch movement. And it's cool. There are all kinds of little tiny elements of the stagger step, and it wasn't anything complicated. And that was a fun part about it. I know you'd see all kinds of things in this. Everything from someone feeling that cannon shot or that GNL about to come on, so they'll stand and twitch in both directions super quick to try to throw a lock a bit. People that had fast enough reactions to kind of feel when a shot would come, and they'd move just enough to get out of the path of an oncoming projectile. Other little stutter methods to kind of fling things out. This has been a part of it forever, and as AC kind of got some of its heads-up display updates, AC2, AC3, as things rolled on and got smoother, this felt more pronounced. I know, especially the controls, you can see a progression, I think, of the controls from AC1 to AC2 to AC3. Obviously, AC2 getting overboost, but still being kind of a slower paced gameplay. And then AC3 picking things up a bit. You got legs gaining walking motions, and the gameplay feeling a little smoother in general, despite having heat. I, for one, felt this most. I could be crazy. I felt this most in AC3. Again, we had it before plenty. I think probably in equal quantities, but it's something about it. I just felt the strongest during the 3 generation.
Mm.
So. And I'm not too sure what could be said for that. Again, AC movement itself didn't exactly undergo huge revolutions. Your booster and your common walk movement still stayed the same. Through what you go through. But this was a fun one. Myself. Again, I always found it kind of funny sometimes just to goof around early with light cannons, or that guy wants to take that first free shot, out of the blue to try to hit you. Um,
Yeah.
but oh yeah, but long term application. I can't say it's something that as far as just the stay in place stutter step that I genuinely depended on. I tried to keep on the move, keep as mobile as possible. But the that jink, that twitch, the thing I really liked about it is it you felt, I guess, a little more synced with your AC. I always felt in the older ACs there was more of an element of control. In fact, I kind of complained to myself sometimes because it felt like I'm trying to do this plane of movement and my AC is just a little bit behind of exactly what I'm going for. We got all we could ever wish for with quick boost. Later on, I mean, we were going at insane speeds. But I really like the sense of control that added to your AC and to your design in general. It felt it was a very responsive thing, and there were little just tiny ways you could adapt it to your playstyle. And yeah, more reasons to miss the older ACs. So yeah, there aren't tons of notes about the Twitch dodging Twitch, and we've had a couple videos on it as well. Like I said, they mentioned it in this little AC live vid that From had posted up. But as we delve deeper into movement, I think the natural progression of that is to dive into the slide jumping and the short slide, as well as the overboost glide, as TM Raven mentioned, kind of popularized by players like Watcher and his lightweight sniper. If there's any technique we've talked a lot about in this show, it's slide jumping, okay, and overboost and everything. And
your favorite?
Yes, dearly, dearly so. I discovered this completely by accident. First time I did it, I thought it was unbelievably cool. I didn't really know exactly how I performed it up front, but I started practicing and working at it, trying to replicate it, and I eventually came to an understanding of it. But I really didn't evolve with it until I kind of connected with the larger community. Playing at ACMM2, I believe it was, yeah, and there weren't tons of hardcore beers that day. I just remember so many op-iers flying around. I didn't get a chance to see their footwork too much. But the ones that did, people were pretty free and open with this as far as just, talking and sharing. I kind of watched how some of the other players, handle some of their planes of movement and everything. And I don't think it was really until ACMM 3, though, meeting people like Wu Fei and kind of sitting down and talking with them that, this really came into, a full development and understanding. And then, play style, mastering your design, mastering your AC. It's funny. I think a lot of players arrived at the same point without, again, necessarily having that same colloquial name to call it. It's like, I just learned the Zen technique of whatever. You weren't going to call it that. It was something you discovered that happened to probably fit into your piloting style real well. We were talking a little bit about this, Tearsin, before this segment, about how we learn, how we kind of pick up things. And, you were kind of like, whatever, names, call it what you want. I ran into, similar things myself that, you put into use. So it
was just playing.
Yeah.
It was just playing Armored Core.
Yeah, it was just playing, it wasn't always about getting a massive amount of diction down or, infallible or undefinable terms to, get all this stuff through. But, a bit about it. And I'm just going to take a little bit from Air's post because it was pretty cool. He posted some explanation on this. First, he had a what it is section. That is, the slide jump is a technique used to keep your AC mobile and energy efficient coming out of an overboost. It's used to bypass the AC's natural tendency to hard brake and stay as mobile as you can be at all times, minimizing time for your opponent to lock onto you and assuring yourself a better angle of engagement. I think well said with that. The first thing coming out of it is avoiding the dreaded hard brake. Anybody who loves overboost, the first thing you're going to see is if you just let it go and if you don't put anything behind your OB, you'll come to a skidding stop. And you will have very poor control during that skid if you just let things go. Getting that plane of movement smooth, that was huge. And the reason this technique was so energy efficient, it was interesting, was you come out of your OB, you go into your slide. Well, A, you're not using your boosters to try and slow yourself or fumble on your controllers to try to come to a stop. Your boosters are cut. 2, when you would lock into your slide movement, there was a slight stationary boost. As remember in the older ACs, we had a movement energy drain and we had a stationary energy drain. So right there, as you revert to your stationary plane, you're going to get a better axis of recovery, even if it's just for a second. And the third thing I'd like to add on to that, and Booyaka discussed this one a lot, was the way slide jumping would jink with your stability, okay, and like your frame stability. Now, as we know, you could still get stunned. There was obviously an impact force in the older ACs, grenade launchers and everything else. And this one was interesting. I had mixed results. I've seen people hit mid slide and still come out of things pretty well, or just maybe they might be lacking a jump depending on how bad they got stunned or what happened. But still, it always seemed to monkey with your stun physics as well, and it seemed to give you a slight buffer as well,
Mm-hmm.
which was super subtle. A good way I think to frame this, anybody who's a fan of fighting games, if you think about it kind of like a just frame block, right? Or like coming out of a parry setup where you have a couple of extra safe frames. That's the idea. So when you take all those elements together, you can kind of see how just such a small movement like that really, really was efficient for your AC in terms of energy, in terms of helping you avoid stun, and straight out movement, and just good, clean footwork. So there's some vids of this posted in this thread if you're curious. Again, TM Raven took liberties on that. If you want to take a look at some of the exact things behind it, we still got all kinds of vids from people playing LR and LR Kai especially.
Last Raven.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And this is just a technique that's very dear to me. I think Silent Line was, I think, my game for really getting this one down. My favorite practice maneuver for this was at the steeple. Those of you who played SL, you probably remember the aerial map steeple. They were just literally these air towers. You fall, you're really dead. You're not going to be coming back from that. And you had to balance where you were going to be at each tower.
I
But
remember that.
a good way to do it, I think, would be to go to the top of steeple. One of the parts you'll notice each tower got more narrow, right, as you got to the zenith. You go to the very top of one of these things, and start on like the third rung, like the third rung, and run your OB slide around that and see how well you can recover, and build your way up to the top rung. And by the time you get up to the top rung, if you can hold a tight circle by still pulling that technique, so yeah, you're getting it. That helped me a lot. So there were all kinds of ways to do it, and all kinds of ways I think to train it. Um, but fun stuff. So there's also an inside joke that I totally agree with. TM post here as well, that a lot of veterans to the technique would joke that you could pick up AC in any old AC game after years. Not You just totally suck, be terrible in your controls and everything else, can't control a lockbox for your life and boost at the same time, but you still know how to slide jump. It was something that you just did and did and did and did till it just became a natural part of your playstyle, and it was hard to unlearn it. It was very hard to unlearn it. So that was
Something you can teach your buddy.
it is. It is, and the funny thing is, obviously, with its relation to overboost, this was something that EO players didn't look at a whole lot. Now, it's important to note, this is overlooked. There's a very small variation of that with just a normal slide jump. And, it's simply triggered by, holding your plane of boost. Let's say you're going to your left or to your right, holding your boost, and then just kind of similar to the slide jump, keeping parallel. You want to do just a tiny bit of release space above the ground, cut your boost, and then a tap of your jump, and you'll go into a slide. And it's a shorter slide, same idea. Never really found this one too practical. Sometimes I just goof off with it just to start a jump, or Raven moved to section C6, you're in a mission, and you had to jump over a barrier. I just did it for style. Woo, wow.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a thing too.
The funny thing about this, if you look at this, is really, I mean, this shows a level of detail to the game, especially so early into when this started with Gen 2.
Yeah.
Well, and to a lesser extent in the first gen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, these kind of mechanics, that's not an oversight. That's not, that they happen to come across that. No, the developers put that in. The
Mm-hmm.
ability to do these things, and I just think that needs to be pointed out, is that this is there's definitely something to be said. You play Armored Core and you take a lot of things for granted because a lot of things just work exactly the way they should.
Yeah, they do. And again, on the developer end, I think, I know myself for one, I think this is something that fans will still be receptive to, especially hardcore fans that are very interested in maximizing their designs, not just in terms of garage, but movement as well. I'm all for little Easter eggs like this in games. I think it's this discovery process that still makes it interesting, and it's amazing because even now, all these years after PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1 generation AC, there's still little things to learn about them that are still hanging around out there, and I think that's what uh, helps give a game not just shelf life, but playability in the long term. It's an ongoing process of mastery.
You know, in particular, with a lot of games, especially with the previous gen, we're talking PS2 and whatever the hell Nintendo had out, and whatever Sega tried to make competitive, but never was.
Yeah.
Um, Dreamcast, I think it was.
Hmm.
Uh, games even back then, and this really came to an end for the most part. Well, you still see it nowadays, but um, in the later part of that gen of consoles. But in the early on for that gen and definitely before it, subtleties and movements when it came to your character, when it came in game, they didn't exist.
No.
Having jerky, weird looking movements from your characters was the norm in large part.
Yeah, it was. Par for the course and process, there weren't really a whole lot of ways to just, manipulate your movement or, I mean, in some games like platformers, there were weird ways to stretch a jump. You could argue even one of the earliest forms of jump manipulation I can think of, heck, Super Mario doing a running jump. But even then, that's as simple as, a slight change in, speed and then doing jump. You didn't have oh wait, let me twitch and I'm gonna go 80 feet now instead of, no. Those things weren't there then, but uh, yeah, it kind of it makes me interested to see or just hear rather what's the thought process of how I think game developers put these kind of things in, or how is it would some honestly call it small slips due to how the movement actually works, and there's just little gaps you can find and just tweak with yourself if you find them, or or how intentional are they, you know. I know I always kind of wondered that myself. I mean, you're gonna have things programmed, right? I mean, for how movement functions and how things jump and what happens, but it's the little. It depends how much of a gap in between, how much manipulation room is in between there to mess with. I think that stuff's really fun. So
Generally speaking, these things are um, these things are tested out rigorously. I mean,
right.
even before the beta phase, the alpha phase of gaming. If they're not, you can tell because that game really sucks, and you cried because you spent 40 to 50 bucks on it. Those are games where they
Yeah,
where they weren't tested out. But
for
obviously, a
sure.
lot of care was put into Armored Core when it
Tons,
came to movement.
tons, and this was From's flagship title. For so long, they're From, or even though Dark Souls has really picked up incredible steam today, for the Armored Core name and From, those are that's their flagship, synonymous series, if anything. So, um, I want to this kind of goes off of slide jumping. There's another version for overboost movement called the overboost glide, as Team Raven also mentioned. It's kind of popularized by players like the Watcher and his famous lightweight sniper. Very fun to play, by the way, if you ever get a chance to play him on Kai. Um, the glide, I'll be honest, this was a move I was so nervous about at first. I found the glide before I found the slide, and the glide is again, I'm just going to break this down into two tiers. Again, I'm quoting from our post here from TM to what it is. The overboost glide is essentially a fluttering of the boosters in such a manner after a quick overboost disconnect and after you picked up momentum. It saves energy by having the overboost being activated for less than it could be, but also keeps your AC going at nearly the same momentum as the overboost for a brief second while only fluttering the boosters. At its core, this is an energy management technique. And for how it's done, the prerequisite skills and control for the glide is very similar to the slide jump. You essentially have to keep your AC parallel to the ground and keep momentum coming out of an overboost. Then manipulate the boosters in such a way that you can keep the momentum while barely using any energy. This was one that I loved to get across the stage fast. I loved it going forward for forward planes of movement. Instead of holding overboost going all the way across the bridge, you could simply get a good burst, let your momentum carry you. It was really good for saving. I think this was especially important post Silent Line. Post Silent Line, you would generate enormous amounts of heat for trying to boost and
Mm.
overboost at the same time. In fact, you would send yourself into a burn.
Well, and
In all
energy
likelihood,
management was so much worse.
it was. It really was, and it was so much tighter there. So I think these techniques started to have more relevance then. They felt they had, I think, more room for kind of flash and science, back in SL, but uh, at least I know for me, being an overboost nut, these seem to become an absolute must, using them. And, the forward glide, this is one I used a lot for missions and everything. The side glide, though, that was a dangerous one. I was always afraid if I held that glide too long, I'd go flying out of the arena and look like a total brick. Oh, man.
Look like a total what?
Brick.
Oh, brick.
I see. I see where you're going there.
Well, that's where I thought you went.
Yeah, I see. I'm watching you. I'm watching you.
You would have looked like that too.
You would have. You really would have. But yeah, it was kind of cool because this one could be used for. It was simply for momentum. We didn't have a backwards overboost at this time, so this was one you were looking for in terms of strafe movement. Kind of forward movement. But yeah, still very helpful in the management department. Again, the same skills from slide jumping can apply to this, and vice versa. Again, I learned this backwards. I had the overboost glide before I had the slide, so they both kind of plugged in together and really kind of helped save you extra energy on missions, especially if you had a really high power core, like the Ray or the later Helios core, or the 08, no, not 008, or can't remember the name of that core now. They've renamed it so many times. It was a really heavy OB core. It became very powerful in Nexus through LR. Feel such a baddie for not remembering it either. But
I don't remember.
Regardless, though, for high power OB cores, this was specifically a good way to kind of mitigate and control your movement. Even for your medium power cores, it was again management and solid management, and it kind of added up to that. So again, there's some more vids in the thread if you guys want to watch that. Check more out about it. Post some cool stories about it. Don't get me talking about this. I'll talk all day of different places I saw others apply. Yes.
I mean, this is fun stuff, but dude, you're a nerd with the big old glasses and lab coat, and you're just like, no, if you do this just a little bit more, I mean, we just have. I mean, it's not that I dislike it. These are obviously all tactics that I use, but for me, it's just kind of like, yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting too because while I don't really remember. Now, I don't really remember you as a hardcore overbooster, but I don't remember you as a hardcore EO user either. I mean, I know you love your rifles, but I wonder could that be if that's part of it too. Like, I mean, how much did you actually get into OB? Like, really, was it a staple thing for your designs, you'd say, or
no?
Really wasn't? Okay.
Yeah. I liked. I think I ended up later in Gen 3. I ended up using a lot of hangers.
Mm-hmm.
I liked a lot of the anti-missile cores.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a lot less to worry about.
Yeah.
No, it's but I used them.
Yep.
I used them. I like the EOs. It was what it was. Like, oh yeah, it's an overboost, and that's what you do with it.
Yeah.
That's,
Oh,
that's man. Yeah. So that's where it was for me. So I'm just gonna. I mean, we were talking about this when we were talking about this topic a couple weeks ago. You're just like, you're like, oh yeah, this. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are these terms you're using? And he's like, no, when you do this, I'm like, oh, well, that's just doing that.
No, but there's an artistic way to describe it. It must be given proper inflection and proper grace. Long story.
Just pushing buttons. I know I've used my AC enough to where I know that when doing this and adding, when doing A and adding B and or C, depending on the situation, I will get outcome D. And so it's just like that's what you do. So that's just the difference, I guess, for us. But you love talking about it. You love, oh my God, and there's this, and it's like, yeah.
Art,
Can we talk more about how there aren't optional parts in Gen 5? That's what I want to talk about.
That's what, but you're talking about optional parts, and I was going somewhere with extensions. There is a technique that I wanted to kind of meet in the middle road here that was, even if you were an overboost nut, regardless of what type of AC you used, if you used extension missiles especially, this was one that about anybody could pick up. And that's at least what was named, from my side of the pond, we just called it the tap trick. Simple enough. Tap trick. Some people called it multi-tapping. Some people called it. There was already multi-taps for PS2. You got to copyright. Rush that.
See, I'm not even going to let you call out the fact that I didn't even know about this trick when we talked about it before the show. But we used to call it the triple tap trick.
The triple tap. See, and again, these all these names behind it. Like I love it. It's almost like there were small pockets of AC fans, as we were before a lot of us discovered the tournament scene, right? Your pockets are like your local play group that you just kind of came up with these names or just didn't name, just those things that you knew were kind of out there, and then someone would start talking about it, and you look at them like they were from Mars, and you play, and you say, "Oh, that, yeah, that's the no, that's the multi tap. No, that's the," but Fortunately, fortunately, we didn't get in arguments like that. But yeah, this one, um, I became really interested in this when I started to heavily incorporate missile packs. This was some of my earliest quads. I'd use a missile of some sort. The freaking crazy multi-warhead missile from AC2. I fell in love with that. But as things went on really into Gen 3, this is specifically where I started to take notice of these. And it started with the multi-lock extensions, or missile packs, such as like the Nymphy, like your 6-lock. Um, and it was again one of these things just kind of by goofing around one day. And Cleric talked about this too. Of I just started tapping my extension, and I noticed that I had an extra set of missiles. And I was thinking these things are hardwired. There's only one way extensions can work. You turn them on, and that's it. And then they do what they need to, and that's all you can do with them. But then you start manipulating a bit. Well, what happens if I turn it, on and off? And sure enough, I saw another set of missiles. So through just a long process of just experimentation, I started to notice that there was a pattern with extensions that had a lower reload rate would give you a better proc for this and a better refresh for firing multiple sets of missiles off of your extensions. So, for example, if you wanted to use
Cheater.
the bug, what do they call this? What do they call this in MMOs? Bug exploits and abuse.
Yep. Cheater. This guy bitches about op-eye, and here he is cheating.
Oh, it's hardcore. Oh,
Cheater.
man. But for example, the RM3, the 4-shot extension, you'll remember this is the circular-looking missile extension that shot the 4 volley. This was during later AC3. That opposed to the GAR-2, the kind of light red-looking extension, only shot 2 missiles. I started messing with it, and it just got fun after a while. Launching, 3 or 4 sets of missiles extensions along with, the rest of your volley, it really, really would beef a missile assault out. And someone who's proficient at dodging, it wasn't overwhelming necessarily, but it was a very good thing to add extra threat along with your missiles. It all of a sudden they weren't so cute anymore. If you don't dodge that right, you will be taking about 12 missiles to the face or more. So now where it got funny in the spot I adapted it, and the only thing I could name this was simply Blitz, and I talked to some people about this at ACMM2. I had a variation of it. And this was just a fun part about just sharing stuff that we just knew. And
I remember that. You were walking around, and you're like, "Hey guys, let me show you how I'm a cheater."
yeah, I was showing everybody how bad I had. And what was it? I really got into using the orbits. I really enjoyed the back unit, and I like having the extensions with them. So natural 2+2. Well, let me see if it works with orbits too. And sure enough, with the fast enough touch, it did, and with the specific extension. So it got to the point where you could essentially do 3 sets of extension missiles with your orbit. So you'd be firing 2 with each orbit. And it was really funny because they'd almost mask the orbits. The orbits were so small when they'd launch anyway, and they moved so quickly, you usually wouldn't see them until they appeared around you in a formation and started shooting. But you'd launch these missiles off with them, and it almost appeared as though you had a missile pack. So your opponent's kind of focused on, the 6 missiles, kind of, oh, okay, and then all of a sudden there's an orbit assault along with it. So many mind games. And this wasn't a deal breaker or anything, people. This wasn't a hit this, get first place. Not at all. But just for pure fun factor, style points, and as Tearsin's going to say, pure cheat factor? Sure. I was always interested how other people could adapt this. I had a faster trigger on my right thumb than I did on my left thumb. So I think my favorite way to do it was to go into an overboost and start cutting a strafe. And then I'd cross my thumbs and go ahead and mash out those the 3 extension taps, and immediately, like a second later, jump back to the normal hold. The only problem with that, naturally, you'd be holding your strafe a little tighter, so you wouldn't be as twitchy on your OB maneuver. But I had a blast with that. Probably my favorite thing to do in AC tech wise. And if you want to add the ice cream on the cake, you go into a slide jump after it.
Oh my god.
And
All right, you see, I've got the best hidden stat, the best hidden thing in Gen 3 ever.
And that is?
missile decoys did damage.
Yeah.
And if you didn't
There's
know
one.
this unless you ran into them,
There's one. Yeah, it's true.
but I mean, you were a proud AC fan if you actually at some point and only because you had to killed
Mhm.
somebody with your damn missile decoy. I had a couple matches like that during my day. We're both out of ammo. We're both down to next to nothing health or armor. I'm sorry. What do? Start using your damn decoys. You run up there and
Oh my
you try to
gosh.
plop them right on the enemy. You could win that way.
Too
But yeah,
fun.
they did next to no damage. But um, I mean, it was such little damage where you'd run into your own decoys and you wouldn't care. Because
Yeah.
you're like, whatever. But I mean, if it came down to it, if you're down to that, I mean, kicks weren't around, and if you didn't have a blade, yeah, you're SOL.
Yeah.
Except you've got your decoys.
And Deeks had some major utility. I love that you bring that trick up because I think the other thing some people would parlay into that would be the what was it, the way it could absorb grenade rounds like a vacuum cleaner. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's probably the funniest thing that I saw. And then you can go on and just throw some in people's face, one or the other. But that one made no sense. You get so
That
excited.
well, and you brought it up earlier that being the guy who shoots off the grenade shot right away at the beginning of a match, how do you get around that? You put on a decoy right away too. That's I mean if you and that was a legitimate strategy. If you were a slow AC, if you were like a super heavyweight or a tank, that's the only way you got around that. Because they could. If you were that slow, if you were that much with like you had all that weaponry and all that armor, you were taking a
Yeah.
nade shot in the face right at the beginning. So what do
Yeah.
you throw out your decoy?
Yeah, really the only way, I mean, that you were actually going to avoid stuff like that, I mean, is if you're right off the bat, kicking off with a good strafe and, into the air boost move. But not everybody was going to do that, like a lot of your more heavily armored slash armed players might have even been overweight, bringing in their own tools to use in off the bat.
Right.
And you were pretty much on rights to be hit by it, especially if you were going extra slow, waiting to get nailed. But yeah, I remember hearing some shouts about this one, and people, well, what the hell did you do? Where'd my round go?
Mm.
Just
But it was
total.
so annoying. But it took serious talent to pull it off.
Yeah. Oh man.
Because it had to be in the center of that giant grenade shot. It couldn't have been on the side or something like that. It wouldn't count. You had to get that thing just right.
It did. It did, and just real fun stuff.
And
Real fun
people
stuff to see.
mastered that.
They did. They did. Some got really good at it. Man, oh man. And you start talking about all these things, and it was so interesting. In a way, you can kind of see a whole, not necessarily a sub game, but you see all these different things and traits that are available. And when you weave this into the flavors of the day, weapons and the builds that were coming about, just last week we were talking about the Go Shut, the Go Mamp, some of the developments that were happening, and different types of designs, real cool stuff depending on what you'd see. And what always made you smile, there were little things that could differentiate. You'd see that slightly different missile technique, or more missiles than you thought should be shooting, or with overboost players, it was always very distinctive to kind of to tell who'd really worked on footwork and like the way they were. You could see it from across the arena easily, the way they were moving. If
Could you?
Yes, and here's what identified it for me. If I saw someone OB and just simply skid to a stop, and because you lose so much control of your AC when you're skidding, and you skid so long, that was, oh, okay, someone might not be working with slide jumping much here. Whereas when they did, you would notice perfect, like very smooth recoveries out of OB. There wouldn't be huge lags or delays and things like that. So it was noticeable if you train your eye for it. But
All right.
it's interesting stuff.
Well, I think that wraps it up for the
It
week.
does. It does. So hey, there's plenty here, people. Thanks again to those of you who posted. Thanks to TM. Plenty of stuff out there. Looking forward to hearing more from you guys. You got anything to post up about it, please do so, and we'll talk about that at the relevant spot. But hey, till then, stay tuned. We will be here again, same time, same place.
Oh,
And
oh, oh.
you got
Real quick,
something? Yep, go for it.
real quick. Zealous for the first time is gonna miss the show in 2 weeks.
Yes.
All right. So when the post comes up for that week's show, I want you guys to post a whole bunch of words that you know Zealous would never let me say in the show, and I'm gonna say them that week. I'm gonna say them all.
The sensors are going to be completely off.
It's gonna be a whole segment. I'm gonna sit there. I'm gonna say all these words. So, and I've got a bunch of them myself that I know I would make him blush if I said them. So it's gonna be a whole thing. Okay, so yeah, start getting those together. I want some creative ones.
Chicken bones too, if
Chicken
possible.
bone.
In any case, you people take it easy. You have a good weekend. Drive safe, whatever you got to do. Have a good one, and we will catch you again. Peace out.
My buddy and me.